Recently, there was an important interim stay order by Delhi High Court in which it restrained banks and housing finance companies from taking any coercive action to recover EMIs or equated monthly installments on loans given for incomplete projects. Today on the Property Show, we examine the most burning question raised time and again by homebuyers stuck in delayed projects. Why should the entire burden of a delayed housing project fall on them? Now, before we go to our experts, here are the bare facts which you should know. These are heavily loaded against the home buyer. Let's start with, even if the home buyer buys into a bank-approved project for loan, he or she is the sole person responsible to continue to pay the EMI for as long as it takes for the home to get completed. This could be promised 3 years, that is great. Otherwise, 5, 7, 10 years. It does not matter. Until the entire principal and interest amount is fully paid up, he continues to pay. Not only does the home buyer continue to pay EMI or loan installments, the family continues to live in a rented accommodation, making it a double financial burden of EMI plus rent. Now, if at all the home buyer defaults on any EMI payment, his or her credit score goes down, making it very hard for the family to get any future loans if required. There are tax benefits which a home buyer can avail on a home loan. But guess what? These benefits only start when the construction of the project is complete. So if the project remains incomplete, the home buyer cannot avail of these tax benefits. And finally, if the home buyer is stuck in a subvention scheme where the builder promises to pay the home buyer's EMIs to the banks till the project is completed, assuring him of more security, and then decides to abandon the project, what happens? The bank and housing finance companies don't go after the builder. They literally first come after you to recover the loan. The Delhi High Court, through this interim stay, has brought this injustice to light, and Justice Rekha Pillai even noted that home buyers are penalized despite being not at fault, and grave and irreparable loss will be caused to the petitioners if they are not granted interim protection. Okay, what's the way out for the home buyers? Because this is, after all, just an interim stay. Let's find out. We've got lawyer Aditya Parolia, a petitioner who represented one lot of home buyers with us. We also have a veteran banker and former MD and CEO at PNB Housing Finance, Sanjay Gupta, and Ghulam Zia, Executive Director at Knight Frank, who always is a sharp and a straight shooter. They join us for some answers. Let me go to the lawyer first. Aditya, significant interim stay. But my worry is, A, will it really hold up in higher court? Or is it just a very short respite for home buyers caught in this rigmarole?
Well, this interim stay has also highlighted certain issues whereby court has said that prima facie how the guidelines issued by national housing banks and also by RBI were violated by these banks and HBFCs. These issues have already been addressed in certain matters by the Honorable Supreme Court, namely the Emerald Court matter, where Honorable Supreme Court highlighted that these subventions were in play and ultimately put the onus upon the builder to pay back to these the EMIs or the pre-EMIs on the builder. Now the issue, the question which you have, will it hold? Absolutely, it will hold. RBI in its own affidavit said that banks have acted in contravention to the guidelines which were framed. Now these guidelines are mandatory to the extent Supreme Court has said in certain matters these guidelines are statutory in nature. Now RBI has come up with a circular after these petitions in 2021, whereby it has said that no such loan or innovative loan schemes can be extended to a normal consumer.
Okay. So that subvention scheme is, of course, now RBI has banned it. So I don't think it's happening. My question is, Aditya, what happens after this interim stay if the home buyers decide not to pay the EMIs? Does their credit score get affected or it doesn't get affected?
Absolutely, it is getting affected, and that is one of the prayers in these writs. See, home buyers are not saying that they do not wish to pre-EMIs ever and ever. What they are saying is, if there was a delivery of a house given on a particular date. Once the delivery happens, we are more than happy to pay the EMIs. But the projects are delayed, or in certain matters, projects have not even started for last 6-7 years. Banks were aware of it. Banks did not conduct any due diligence. There is a mandate that you should send an architect and take an architect report. You should keep checks and balances. Banks never did all these
Right.
compliances. Now, instead of going against the builder or asking questions from the builder, they are coming against only the buyers. Even in these tripartite agreements, there are clauses that banks can go and again in a recovery proceedings or take call back the loan amount from the builder. In none of the matters which we are representing or which has come to light, banks have proceeded against builders in any case or any court.
Oh my
or
God.
not
Okay,
even
okay,
court.
Aditya, let me bring in the bankers here and the IPCs. Sanjay, this is a long-standing problem. Even though subvention plans have now been, done away with, let me tell you what happened during COVID. I went for a family wedding and I met 3 youngsters, one living in Pune, one living in Hyderabad, and another living in Bengaluru, so big IT family. All 3 of them had the same complaint. They said, RERA has given the builders a 9-month moratorium, but we continue to pay EMI and rent, right? So here's my question. Subvention or not subvention, it's always the home buyer who continues to bear the entire burden.
Well, you are very correct, because the individual customer is the borrower. I hate to take that word. So the liability of repayment of loan is that of the individual customer or the family. Now, having said so, I'm also very customer oriented, and I do agree with what you are saying, that in cases where the projects have been delayed, I think what we have to really work out is there is a solution, and that's a multi-party solution between RBI, between the courts and the credit bureaus. So if a project is getting unduly delayed and the customer's repayments by and large are under stress, then what is the way not to qualify it as an NPA? So should there be a provision that in case the default is because of not because of intention, but because of factors which are not under the control of the lending institution and the customer, that particular project can be sort of, the customers of that project, their loan should not be marked or stamped as NPA or defaults. Now, the RBI notification is very clear that till the time all 4 installments are not repaid, that loan will be an NPA account. And the credit bureaus will also take note of that.
So you're saying that it's time that the Reserve Bank of India took note of how this is getting classified as NPAs, especially in troubled times, or even for projects where actually the buyer is at no fault at all. Ghulam, the thing is that every bank is now running after home loans. And the reason we know is why. It is the safest category of loans, isn't it? Because the maximum responsibility of repayment lies on the home buyer, therefore making it the most safest loan possible.
Yeah.
So Ghulam, come in here and tell me, in a tripartite agreement over so many years and despite so many cases, why have we not been able to make it a little more just for the home buyer?
For so long, not much has been done to sort out the problem. Now, your question is there anything that we can do, or what is it that a solution is? Well, even now, I don't know what exactly the solution, but the problem remains that ultimately it's the home buyer who is penalized, and what you just spoke about, because these home loans are actually on the top priority of every borrower. In spite of whatever is going on, no jobs or whatever, they try their best to perhaps sell the family jewels or whatever else to pay the EMI. And if you need to just look at the intention and intent, well, the home borrower are the ones who have to come, who have to be given that preference when a situation like this arises. They have to be thought about first. But then that has to change. I don't know if there is anything that RBI recently has done. The only thing I can think of which was happened even after so many years was that whatever it is they have done by way of the SWAMI fund, trying to find out wherever these problems are stuck and setting aside a huge sum to salvage these kind of problems. That was a good solution. But then once again, even in such projects, there is nothing specially done for the borrowers alone.
Sanjay, Aditya raised a very important question, and because you were the MD of Punjab National Bank Housing, PNB Housing, that, once a buyer thinks that some of the reputed housing finance companies and banks are giving loans in this project, they've obviously done their due diligence. But we know that due diligence is very, very weak. Is there a way to make that sharper? And somehow, how do you kind of get that information out that just because it's approved for home loans doesn't mean that the project is safe?
I'll go a little bit into the sort of a life cycle of a project approval. So one is that before a project takes over, starts, there's a legal and technical validation that a lending institution does undertake, and make sure that all the permissions from the local authority, the RERA registration, the land titles are all clear and done with. Secondly, what happens is that the customer is required to pay their own equity upfront before the loan gets disbursed. And last and not least, disbursements are made after a technical survey of the project. Now, if all this was happening, why such situations have happened? And I will be very frank, and over the 37 years that I have been a mortgage banker in our country, what has happened is that the customers were availing a lot of discounts from the developers, whether it was cash down or it was accelerated payments, things like that. And the customers were also actually party to these, I would say, premature disbursements, because they were availing of capital discounts or cost discounts from these developers. So it is not that the lenders on their own unilaterally were disbursing these loans. The customer was very much aware. You have been witnessing.
Sanjay, I would disagree there. There have been many cases where the customer has gone in because the developer, come on, look at the JP case. Would you, as somebody who's building such big highways, expressways, would you think that they would just default on their projects, right? So let's not bring the home buyer. Home buyers are not that sharp.
I'm not saying. I'm also an individual homeowner, right? So my empathy is with the customer. But how do we resolve it?
So should we say then, let me just say one thing. Should we just tell all the home buyers, don't ever get into an under construction project. Don't bother about that 15-20% discount that you will get in an under construction project. Sanjay, if I say that, the entire financing of the industry will stop, right? Because that is where the money comes for building the project.
That is exactly the point. In a country which is at least 3-4 times larger than us on mortgages, the United States of America, under construction properties don't get a loan. So the individuals take up an individual risk on a project, right, by law. So I think you have hit the nail on the head. Since everybody, all lending institutions are running after this retail home loan, it should be better defined by the regulator.
Absolutely. And I think that's all that I wanted you to highlight. But let me just get quickly also, Aditya, in better regulation. Aditya, High Court has just given an interim stay. What's next? I'm sure the lawyers will approach the higher court and then get this stay reverted, isn't it? In legal language, vacated rather. I was looking for that word. So what happens then?
No, we are going to fight it till end. See, as the gentleman said that there were compliances done. If we check on ground, 0 compliances were done, Manisha. There was no architectural surveys done. There was no technical checks which were done. There was nothing which was conducted. In fact, the disbursement is not just 50 or 40%, it's 90% at the very moment go. That's the upfront disbursal. Now today, even if they go to a Supreme Court or a division bench, both these benches have already given their opinion on this subject matter. RBI in its own affidavit says that everything which has happened is in contravention. Yes, disbursals have happened without linking anything to construction.
Okay. So you're saying there are enough legal premises for you to go higher up and fight the case. Ghulam, do you believe that at a regulation level we need to protect home buyers much more? And despite RERA, there are many gaps which need to be fixed.
I fully agree. In fact, this whole discussion, the debate was going on. I was actually wondering with implementation of the regulator, the way things are supposed to happen, the progress of the project has to be available on a click of the mouse on your laptop. So whether it is lender or anybody else, if they want to check what is happening, obviously one way is to send the surveyors to check what's happening on the ground. On the other side, the RERA, the website of the RERA is supposed to have the progress of each of these projects. So ideally speaking, we have put up the system. That system has to work to ensure that no slip-ups like what we're talking about should ever happen. But then once again, it's a lot of human intervention all through. And unless we create much more stricter audit system, the only solution that is remaining is then not to let anybody take a home loan on under construction project, which is obviously, as you rightly said, will bring the whole industry, the capital flow to a grinding halt. So I would believe that unless we are following the system properly and there is some audit on that, if you are following it, check it with RERA's website. If the project is stuck somewhere, you should raise the red flag as the borrower, as the lender. And the developer has to keep on feeding that information. And because these things didn't happen in past, these problems you're facing. So the only way is to ensure that we are completely compliant and diligent about whatever is happening and connect to the systems that we have created, which are pretty good so far.
I think we'll have to end it there. I know we can go on the discussion, but the takeaways I'm going to close this discussion on is that we have to have better regulation to recognize those NPAs. As Sanjay said, RERA has to continuously update the progress of a project, and lenders should red flag. Lenders should also be doing far more diligence when it comes to extending loans to developers.